Good evening. My name's Chuck Iovan, and I'll be presiding over this evening's meeting of the Malden Planning Board, September 8th, 2021. We have two items on the agenda, 272, 274 Cross Street, which will be heard first, and then 215 Beach Street. First couple administrative items to take care of first. For those in attendance, under the provision of the open meeting law, attendees are informed that this meeting is being recorded by Urban Media Arts, formerly MATV. I have not been notified that any other video or audio recording of this meeting will occur. We'll now take a roll call, starting with Tawadage, or I guess starting with Risa, even though Charlie Ferguson and Risa Gray will not be participating this evening in either public hearing, but unless we end up having an emergency where we have to draw upon them. It's great that they're here. I remind everyone we're back to wearing masks. Please speak up. Please speak into the microphone so that you're heard. We tested the microphones earlier with the media people, and they can hear us, so we ask everyone to speak into the microphone when you're talking. So if we could start with Risa Gray. Give me a second, I gotta cue you up. Go ahead, Risa.
Risa Gray, Planning Board.
Tawadaj Gabrasilase, Planning Board.
Patrick Fitzgerald, Planning Board.
Diane Shuha, Planning Board.
Ken Antonucci, Planning Board.
Chuck Iovan, Planning Board.
Michelle Romero, City Planner.
Eric McCush, Planning Board.
Pat Hayes, Planning Board.
Eric Henry, Planning Board.
Henry Susi, Planning Board.
Charlie Ferguson, Planning Board.
Thank you very much. Ken, can you read the notice for the first hearing, which is 272, 274 Cross Street?
The Malden Planning Board will hold a public hearing in the Herbert L. Jackson Council Chamber, Malden City Hall, 215 Pleasant Street, Malden, Mass. at 7 p.m. on Wednesday, September 8th, 2021, on a petition of Iwano Investments, LLC, permit application number CMID 038087-2021, seeking a special permit under Section 12.28.010D of Chapter 12, Revised Ordinances of 2020, as amended, of the City of Malden, to alter, structurally change, extend, and change use of a pre-existing non-conforming property in Residence A zoning district, namely to demolish the existing one-story building, to construct additions to the existing 2.5-story dwelling, to expand the first, second, and third floors, and to change use from a 3-family dwelling to a multifamily dwelling up to 3 stories with 5 units at the property known as and numbered 272 to 274 Cross Street, Malden, and by Malden City Assessor's Parcel ID number 084-405-527.
Thank you very much, Ken. Is the petitioner present? And before you start, Counselor, I'd like to remind everyone, if you come up to speak at the podium, please announce your name and address for the record and sign the sign-in sheet so we get the correct spelling and address. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairperson, ladies and gentlemen. Thomas Callahan with offices at 1 Center Street here in Malden. I am here representing Iwano Investments, and its principal, Gabriel Iwano, is with me as well. We seek a special permit to alter and change a pre-existing non-conforming structure, as well as to demolish an existing 1-story structure that, to our knowledge, has not been used for a number of years, originally a commercial structure. Presently in the residence, there's 3 units with 6 bedrooms. And what's noted in the existing building and the layout is that there is a 4-bedroom unit on the first floor currently. And this has been, it's caught the attention of the neighbors in terms of some issues with such a large unit. Also, there's 2 small units on the second floor currently, and it's a 2.5-story structure. While we're proposing to increase the number of bedrooms from 6 to 8, we are creating small units to address what we have perceived as the neighborhood concerns in terms of noise and disruption to the abutters. So our proposal is to demolish the single-story structure at the front of the lot, which I spoke about as being a former commercial establishment. We'd square off the existing structure, and we also propose to make it a full 3 stories as opposed to 2.5 stories, which it is currently. Currently, there's 2 open rooms on the 3rd floor, together with some knee wall space. But we're proposing to make it a full 3rd floor, but we're not proposing to increase the height of the existing structure. We're staying within the height of the current existing structure. The plans show that we have 8 bedrooms, I'm sorry, 8 bedrooms, 8 parking spaces. We have 8 parking spaces at the rear, so we conform to the parking requirement under the zoning. And that's a big part of our plan, was to conform to the parking requirement, knowing that the area doesn't have excess parking and is in need of off-street parking. We've met with the neighbors, as I mentioned earlier, and consulted with them about the property, and also consulted with the ward counselor to try to address the concerns of the neighborhood, at the same time recognizing the past problems with the property. We had a neighborhood meeting with 6 or 7 neighbors, and as we understand it, the neighborhood is in support of our proposal, and we're very pleased with that. We also propose to replace the existing fencing. There's existing fencing on both sides and at the rear, and we would propose to replace that to screen the parking area. All that said, I'm sure you've looked at the plans, and I would propose to you that this application is not more detrimental to the neighborhood, because that was a big part of our input, and that was the big part of our planning, was what the neighbors did want. And I thank you very much.
Is that it?
Yes, thank you.
Can you expand on what some of the noise complaints and past problems with the property are?
Well, there was some outside area that was being used. I think the neighbors could speak more firsthand to that, but as I understand it, there was some outside area that was being used for outside activities and perhaps late at night or inappropriately. And this 4-bedroom unit had any number of different folks there. And in the present situation, the present structure of the 4-bedroom unit, and that was just causing just general disruption in addition to noise, but just no respect for the neighborhood and just not a good situation.
Did Mr. Iwano own the property when this was happening?
No, he did not.
When did he purchase the property?
He purchased the property in 2019. It's basically been vacant since he purchased it. Well, I know it's been vacant for the last year at least. Almost a year. For the last year. So he got busy in terms of vacating the property, but it's been vacant for at least a year at this point. Fully vacant, that is, no tenants whatsoever.
Okay. In a couple questions, if I could. Will Mr. Iwano be living at the property?
I'm sorry?
Will Mr. Iwano be living at the property?
He does not intend to live at the property, no. He has a number of different properties in Malden and in the greater Malden area. His office is close by, and so he intends to be a hands-on landlord who will be close to the site.
With regard to that, why 5 units?
Why
Is it purely economic driven?
Yeah, the economics are driving it to the extent there's the demolition to be done, squaring off the units, squaring off the structure, rather. I think if my client were honest, he probably had visions of more units, but after discussion and reconsideration, we decided that, the 5 units with the 8, I think what to us the key was the 8 bedrooms. We have 8 parking spaces, and there's 6 bedrooms there now, and with the 8 parking spaces, we felt that it wouldn't add to the congestion in the neighborhood.
Okay, and that your client's aware that it's an 8,045 square foot lot?
Is he aware that it's an 8,000?
Yes, and what the requirements are for what his proposal is over 10,000 more?
Yes, he is aware of that, Mr. Chairperson, yes.
Okay. I get a couple real kind of specific questions about the unit layout themselves. I noticed there's a study on the proposed first floor.
Yes.
What is your client going to do to prevent that from becoming a 3rd bedroom?
Well, we certainly don't want it to become a 3rd bedroom, and that's why we left the opening rather large to the room and did not put a door on it. We believe in today's remote work environment that, an office is very valuable. I understand your concern about that becoming a bedroom. I understand your concern from the past about offices or becoming bedrooms, and that is why we tried to do everything we could to keep it as an office, but not make it a bedroom. No closet, a larger opening than usual, and no door.
So he's just relying on the tenant to not convert that into a...
Well, Mr. Iwano is a hands-on landlord, and he will certainly respect that, if the board were to approve this, that the board approved it believing that that was going to be used as an office. And he would make sure that in that particular lease that it was clear that that room was an office.
Okay, and then what I'd like you to speak to, if you could, is the usable open space that's being proposed on the plans. When I viewed the plans, it appeared that most of the already substandard lot size is going to be, most of the rest of it's going to be used for parking. Where's the usable open space going to be provided on the lot?
Well, the usable open space is scarce. I have to be frank about that. Again, the neighbors felt that in the past, there was space at the rear that was not used in conformance or in a way that the neighbors appreciated. So we were trying to take, that piece of it into consideration and have the 8 parking spaces so that we could show the neighbors that we were trying to design the renovation such that there would be somewhat limited opportunity for folks to barbecue or party outside. That was really one of the goals.
So it was by design that you didn't provide open space?
I'm sorry.
it was by design that you did not provide open space.
Partially, yes, yes.
Okay, how is your client going to deal with water if that's all impervious space now? So I'm assuming it's gonna be bituminous, concrete?
He plans on putting asphalt, but I'm not sure he's made a final plan on whether it would just be crushed gravel, because of course crushed gravel would allow for the drainage of water. Otherwise, you'd have to put in a dry well, in my opinion.
Okay, so if depending which way he goes, he's prepared to put in a dry well.
We have to respect that we do get rain these days, much more than we ever experienced before.
Yeah, it seems so, doesn't it, this past season? How long, you said the unit is vacant already. How long would the renovations take place?
We expect the renovations would take upwards of 9 months anyway. Of course, it depends on, the supplies being available. We've had some issues in today's world with supplies not being available, but assuming all materials and supplies are available, I would expect it would be 9 months before it was ready for tenants, yeah.
Okay, so less than a year. No, that's, right now, that's all the questions I had at the moment. If anyone else have any questions for the petitioner? Ken Antonucci.
Yes, I'm just curious on the design for the first floor. It's one unit, it's 2 full baths right next to each other. Just curious as to, seems like an odd thing.
That's on the proposed, you speak?
Yeah, proposed use, first floor, 1 unit with 2 full baths, like back to back.
Well, yeah, one's intended to be the master. If you see the door there, so to have the master suite, if you will, the door is before the bath, that second bathroom. So you could close the door and have the privacy of having access to the bathroom as well as the bedroom.
Oh, okay, yeah, I see the door now. All right, thank you.
Any other questions for the petitioner? Yep, that's fine, Michelle, and whenever you're ready.
So my question is back to the paving. If you're going to use the area for parking or vehicular traffic, it has to be adequately drained and paved with bituminous concrete or the equivalent. So you couldn't use crushed stone or, is that, so you can't put anything like that. It's either gonna have to be, a permeable asphalt or something, so it's gonna have to be paved.
Okay,
So-
we'll respect that. So-
Okay, so you would be willing to install a drainage system? If the
Yes,
city engineer,
Yes,
at his discretion?
I think we'd have to, because that's a reasonably large area, and of course, with some of the rains we've had of late.
Right.
It's
Okay.
got nowhere to go. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you. The other thing I wanted to ask was in terms of your tenants, you mentioned this 4-bedroom had a lot of issues. It sounded like because of maybe four people living there.
Maybe 8 people.
Yeah, well, earlier this year, the city changed the zoning, so now up to 4 unrelated people can live in a single dwelling unit. That was changed by the city council. So it's not based on, it's based on the size of the unit. So if the bedrooms are big enough, 2 people can be in it. I know you're showing 1 bedroom, 1 bed in it, but you could have multiple beds in a bedroom.
Yes, you could.
So does he have any plan, where I'm going with this, does he have any plan who he's going to rent this large unit to? Because it potentially could still be for, 4 unrelated individuals, or it could be a family of any size. So does he have any idea who he'd be renting to, that size unit?
Are you speaking in the current condition?
No, I'm talking, well, the existing unit is 1,180 square feet, and proposed it's 1,378 square feet. So it's a large unit. Does he have any plan as to who he would rent it to? Is he going to use a company to rent, screening, things like that, or?
Well, no, he's a hands-on property manager, and
Okay.
he has his small construction firm as well. And as I mentioned before, he has a number of properties in the area, and has his office in Everett? Everett. And so he's close by, and he's going to keep a sharp eye. He keeps a sharp eye on all his properties, and I don't know that there's a set type of tenant that you'd want there, but certainly he respects the neighborhood and respects that he has to control the number of people that are living there, because if you have too many people in a unit, you start to wear down the unit, you start to get neighborhood complaints, you start to have parking issues, you have all sorts of problems, and he's well aware of that.
So he'll market the units himself? Does he
I don't know if
think, or-
he'll market themselves, but
or-
clearly he'll be involved in the
Okay.
screening and in the choice of the tenants, yes.
Okay, thank you. And then that was my other question also related to that unit. Was there any, I heard you mention he had at one point considered more units, but was there any consideration to breaking up that unit, to having smaller units, whether they just be one-bedroom units or, a two-bedroom? I know this is a two-bedroom, but it's a very, very large two-bedroom.
Well, it's an older structure that needs some significant work in terms of updating and, of course, the demolishing of that useless and rather ugly single-story block structure in the front lawn. So when, in terms of the business plan, it was just determined that this was what would make this project viable, rather than trying to take the existing structure and just cut it up. Because, of course, once you start taking an original floor plan and trying to adapt to it, as I think we've all seen in some older buildings that maybe were originally a single family and turned into a two, it can get rather unwieldy and really not terribly efficient.
But, I mean, he's going to gut the whole place, right? Is that the plan?
Yeah, he's basically, I mean, he might keep a few interior walls, but
Okay.
basically, because with squaring it off, of course, he's going to just be adding some space on the corners, so it has to incorporate all that in.
Yeah, it did look like there were all new walls on the first floor, so I was wondering, was there any consideration given to creating two units as opposed to one large unit on the first floor?
There was, but we didn't want to increase the number of units, and we're trying to find a balance between the number of units and the number of bedrooms for the neighborhood and to obtain approval, quite frankly. We felt that this was a better number than additional units, because, of course, that might strike folks as intensifying a use on the property.
Okay, and so he bought it, my last question, he bought it in 2019?
2019.
And was there were records that storefront was being used as an illegal unit? Was that, in fact, happening when he bought the property, or?
No, I think that happened
He
well
bought- did he-
well before he bought the
Okay.
property.
That was around
I did see it in-
2018 or so,
I
but?
did see it in your staff report. That was
Okay.
news to me. I didn't realize that
Okay,
had
so-
come across the city's in
When he bought it,
compliance.
that was vacant?
When he bought it, there were, it was vacant.
That storefront was vacant?
Oh,
Okay.
yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions for the petitioner? Anything else you'd like to add, Counselor?
I don't think so. Thank you, Mr. Chairperson.
Thank you very much. At this time, would like to entertain anyone that would like to speak in favor of this petition. Anyone in favor?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the Malden Planning Board. My name is Neil Anderson. I'm the Ward 7 City Councilor. I live at 56 Mill Street in Malden, and I'm here and speaking in support of this petition that's before you this evening. We've convened a couple of meetings with the neighbors, and some of those are here this evening, who have met with the developer, the owner of the property, and with their attorney. And we were concerned about the impact that whatever development would go in there would have upon the neighborhood. You know, it is a Residence A, we understand that, and that is a non-conforming, currently a non-conforming use. And it sits up against, if you're looking at the property from the Cross Street side, looking off to the right, there are two huge multi-unit apartment buildings over on Henry Street that abut the property. So while it is a Residence A district, having 5 units in that area, you know, we, the neighbors and myself, didn't see that as being an over-abuse of that neighborhood, given that those other buildings were there. We're concerned, of course, about the current condition of the building, and we were encouraged to hear about the development plan that the owner has proposed of taking out that appendage building in the front, of removing that garage in the back, and the general renovation of that property, fencing and yard. And we thought that while they originally talked about having many more units, when we first met with them, they were talking about wanting to put 8 units in there. You know, we were totally against that. We were totally against that. We met and heard the proposal for 5 units and listened to the developer and listened to his attorney and walked away with a convince that this was something that we should support, that we as a neighborhood would support. There were about 10 or 12 people that were at these meetings. They were unanimous in their support, and they've asked me to express that to you, the planning board. And so 3 of those folks are here this evening, but there were a group of about 12 people that were here, all people who are abutters to the property, who asked that you consider favorably this petition that's here before you. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Is there anyone else that would like to speak in favor? Anyone else that would like to speak in favor? Feel free to come up, name and address for the record, and please sign in on the sheet there.
Good evening. My name is Mary Ann Olive, and I live at 206 Cross Street in Malden. I lived at 206 Cross Street in Malden for 78 years. The property on 272 and 274 was owned by my best girlfriend, Pam Valentini, who we still see. I met her in the 2nd grade, and we were together. That was a nice home. But unfortunately, the building, the little office space that Mr. Valentini built in probably the 40s or 50s was for a hair salon, which was in there. Pam and the Valentinis moved away, sold the property to, I'm not really too sure who, and that was probably in maybe the 60s. I'm not quite sure of the dates. But since then, there have been several different owners of the property. It's an eyesore. It's bad enough that we have the buildings on Henry Street but the gentleman does take care of them as best he can. I believe that if they take the house down and the little shop down and build his units, I think that we can get the clientele in there that is appropriate for our area, because the school is, of course, right up at Ferryway Green, so we have kids going by there all the time, up and down the street, and you have the park. So I think that we need to be sure that we have people that can afford a nice apartment and like the apartment. If people from Boston come there, if you cross Henry Street, you have the bus stop right there. So the people will, if they park their cars there and they do work in Boston or other places, they can just hop on the bus right across the street from Henry. So I think it's a great idea. I've been in the city a long time. I've seen things happen that have really improved the city since I was a little girl. And although I cried when Lincoln went down, because of course that was my school, but the kids seem to love Ferryway much better and use the park much more than they use the one in Lincoln. So that's my story, and I believe that we met the gentleman. He seems to be a good man. He seems to be respectable and wants to have a nice clientele and wants to keep the area nice. And I truly believe, as a resident of Malden for all these years, that we should give somebody a chance to improve our property. And I'm just going to stick in something that you don't know. I live right next door to Thistles, and that is a garage. When I came to Malden in 1943, it was a gas station there with gas pumps and all that. So I have lived with a gas station that, of course, has been removed, but a space where trucks, huge trucks, come onto that street that are the length of my house, because he works in safes and ATM machines. So there are big rigs and there are big trucks. I have learned to live with Scott Thistle, and his parents brought that property. It was first owned by Mr. Bernstein, who had used to keep the pony trucks in there when we had the horses on the street. And so it was like a parking garage, but then he had the pumps. So I think we should get on with the program and try to get something new going, get something better. You're never gonna get that area all that great. We saw pictures of what is gonna go up there. It's the same height as all the houses that are in the area, even though there's 5 units there. So nobody's gonna be looking up and say, what is that big thing in the bottom of the street? It's going to be laid out lovely. And I think I'd like to walk up and down Cross Street, go to the park and see something nice for a change. And that's my story.
Well, thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Oh, I've got to sign it. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Janet Manoni. I live at 266 Cross Street. I'm right next door to this proposed building. I'm actually for it because it's empty now, it's an eyesore, and I think the plans that he has developed look good. We've talked to him and we've had meetings, and as long as, you know, he does what he says he's gonna do, I have no objections to it. I think the neighborhood will be all right with just 5 units. So That's all I have. I'm for it.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone else that would like to speak in favor? Michelle, do you have anything to read in favor?
No.
If there's no one else that would like to speak in favor, I declare that part of the hearing closed. And we'll move on to those that would like to speak in opposition to this petition. Michelle, anything to read in opposition?
No.
Seeing and hearing no one that would like to speak in opposition, and declare that part of the hearing closed. Michelle, could you read your staff report and take us through the recommendation?
So for the board's reference, this report is dated September 8th, 2021, and it is incorporated by reference into the record of the hearing, even though I'm not going to read every word verbatim. I won't repeat anything that's already been discussed in terms of the proposal. You heard about the expansion plans, the demolition, et cetera. I've given you a breakdown here of the existing and proposed configuration of the dwelling units, including their size, number of bedrooms, location. This is based on the plans that were submitted by Petitioner. I will note, when I didn't ask about this, but there is one question regarding the proposed basement. The basement is listed here as having the same size, but there will be an expansion to create a couple crawl spaces, and that's not included in those numbers. I've listed so right now there are 6 bedrooms, 3 units, and under the proposal there will be 5 bedrooms and 8 units. Again, I've given you the breakdown and the size. The overall increase in total building space is approximately 25%. In terms of the space allocated for the units, it's an 83% increase, a 33% increase in the number of bedrooms. So that's going from the 6 to the 8. In terms of the plans, I've listed here the plans that were submitted in support of the petition. You have the set of floor plans, which include elevations and some architectural site plans. You also have a site plan that was prepared by the land surveyor. In terms of zoning and occupancy, the property is located in the Residence A zoning district. The existing 3-family dwelling is prohibited in this district. It predates the current ordinance and is considered pre-existing non-conforming. The original business use of the single-story accessory building also predated the current ordinance. It was considered pre-existing non-conforming. That status expired. That use is considered abandoned because it's not been used for more than 2 years. I mentioned that there are city records of an illegal unit in that accessory building, and the unit was ordered to be removed, not the building, the unit, in 2018. The proposed multifamily dwelling up to 3 stories is prohibited in this district. It may be allowed by special permit as an extension or conversion of a pre-existing non-conforming use, which is what this petition is before you. Direct abutters to the north are multifamily dwellings with 5 units and 13 units. To the west, a 2-family dwelling. To the south, a 2-family dwelling. And to the east, on the other side of Cross Street, 2-family dwellings. Surrounding land uses are residential, mostly 2-family dwellings, an occasional single or 3-family dwelling, a restaurant, and Lincoln Commons Park. In terms of dimensional controls, the principal building, which is the dwelling building, predates the current ordinance. It grossly violates dimensional controls for lot area and 1 side yard setback. It's considered pre-existing non-conforming. I've given you the breakdown here of what the required lot size is for the existing 3-family dwelling and the multifamily dwelling. I've given you all the dimensional controls, the requirements for both. In terms of lot size, the existing deficiency is 57%. That's maintained because the 3-family dwelling requires the same lot size as the multifamily dwelling. Other new deficiencies that are created by this proposal are front yard setback and side yard setback. So the proposal maintains the existing gross lot area deficiency, it eliminates the violation of density and open space, because less density is required for the 5 units than for the 3. The open space, I'm sorry, that shouldn't say it eliminates the violation of open space, because I'm not sure, they've depicted 1,650 square feet of open space available, but that's not actually shown on the plan. So that was a question. Not allowed to count the areas for parking. In terms of accessory buildings, both accessory buildings, a single-story building in the front yard and the shed in the rear yard violates yard setback requirements. As I mentioned, the single-story building predates the ordinance, may be considered pre-existing nonconforming. The status of the rear shed is not known. Currently on site are landscaped areas with grass in the front, western side yard, and rear yard. There are brick pavers in the western side yard and part of the rear yard, gravel in the majority of the rear yard. Under the proposal, the vast majority of the rear yard will be paved and used for parking and access. So there are usable open space requirements for all districts that are applicable to this proposal. The usable open space must consist of areas for active and passive recreational use, shall not be used or considered for off-street parking or vehicular access or egress. Each usable open space area shall be a minimum of 1,000 square feet in area and have a minimum width and grade. And all open space shall be pervious, visible to the public, and a minimum of 50% shall be located in yard setback areas where setbacks are required. More information is required to determine whether the property currently complies with applicable zoning and whether the proposal complies with applicable current zoning. So, given the proposed parking layout, as I mentioned, it's highly unlikely that there is 1,650 square feet of usable open space that can be provided as required for the proposal. As I mentioned, the site plan does provide statements about usable open space, but it doesn't depict the location of what's existing or proposed. The plan is not to scale, and it does not include the dimensions, so wasn't possible for me to determine that. I did request a to-scale plan be submitted and a plan showing the usable open space be submitted. I did not receive that to date. Parking requirements. A paved driveway runs along the western side of the dwelling. There's an existing curb cut on Cross Street. It ends at the shed, the driveway, but there are contiguous bricked areas and gravel areas which are currently being used for parking, or at least they were when I was there during the site visit. So the existing 3-family dwelling complies with applicable parking requirements. It is a non-conforming layout. The proposed multifamily dwelling with 5 units and 8 bedrooms requires 8 parking spaces, 1 per bedroom. 8 are proposed on site. In terms of yard areas not paved for parking or access must be landscaped. Currently, more than 50% of one side yard is paved and used for parking and access. That's the driveway side. That predates and doesn't comply with the current requirement that a minimum of 50% of the front, side, and rear yards must be devoted to lawn or landscaping and not paving. The proposal is to maintain that existing driveway and pave nearly the entire backyard for parking. However, those landscaping, non-paving of yard area regulations do not apply to multifamily dwellings. So this proposal would be eliminating that violation. In terms of snow storage, there is a snow storage area depicted in the northeastern corner of the yard that complies with the requirement. Screening, the off-site parking for this proposed residential use must be screened with fencing or foliage and maintained by the owners of the multifamily property. So that would be required along the western, northern, and eastern property lines. The site plan contains a note near the northern property line, existing fence to be replaced. The wooden fencing along the northern and eastern lines is broken in many areas. It's in overall poor condition. It requires replacement. Finally, in terms of demolition, the Demolition of the single-story building was reviewed by the Malden Historical Commission pursuant to the Demolition Alteration Delay Ordinance on July 22nd, 2021. The commission made the determination that building, the accessory building, is not significant. Its demolition will not be delayed. I've given you a copy of that notice of determination. The finding you would need to make to grant the special permit is that the proposal is not more detrimental to the neighborhood. Do you have questions, or you want me to move forward?
Does anyone have any questions for Michelle? Patrick Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Michelle, back to that issue of open space. I don't know if the petitioner's in a position to answer this regarding my view of this is that they're losing open space in the rear of the yard, however landscaped it was, but gaining it in the front in the area where they're removing that one-story structure. So I'd be curious to know the net change based on that.
Yes, I wasn't able to determine that, and I looked at this with Nelson Mello, the building commissioner, to try to get some approximates. The building was approximately 200, I believe it was 270 square feet. So there's 270 square feet. I'm not sure about this other area. It's 18 feet to the front porch. Of course, that porch, part of that porch is going to be enclosed, so that will square off in the front, so it won't be the full 270. This area marked grass along the side isn't actually grass. That's where those brick pavers are, and then there's some grass in the front. But that is why I asked for a plan showing existing open space and proposed open space, and also asked for a plan that was at least to scale, because even though it's supposed to be shown on the plan, I could use a scale and figure it out if it was to scale, but we couldn't figure it out because this was just a photocopy. It wasn't the to-scale plan, so I don't know. Again, the requirement is 1650. I don't think it's going to come up to 1650. I'm not sure exactly what it is, though.
And are we pretty sure that existing is 1455?
I'm sorry?
You said the existing building for open space in the planning report.
No, we're not sure at all. That's why I put that note. Those are the numbers, so the plan put in text form what the open space was. So I used that, but that's not reflected on the plan. So that's basically like the text saying there's that open space, but it's not shown. So that's why, if you see it says see note 4. I'm sorry, that's the wrong note. So it should have said see, is that see note 4? I'm sorry. I think I wrote see note 4. And it should have said see note 5. Because, as I said, the plan states there's usable open space, but it doesn't depict the location, and we weren't able to determine that. So those numbers I put in the chart, I just took off. That's a mistake, though. It should say C note 5, not 4.
And where they're using, as you note, in their existing parking use, is that they're, and I don't know how it can comply with the existing parking requirements when saying that they have to use tandem parking and on landscaped yard space. So is that, if they're using it for parking, is that still considered open space?
No, and that's kind of the problem. I think that they only need, for the 3-family, they only need 4.5 spaces. So if you use the driveway and you use the couple spaces that aren't landscaped in the back, just the paved area in front of, say, that red shed, you could get the 4.5 spaces parked. It's a non-conforming layout, though. I noted, though, that when I was there, they were using the other areas for parking, even though it's, I think it's supposed to be yard areas. So the problem is it's not shown on the plan. You know, it's shown now as parking. I think it was yard area before. Some of it looks grass, and there, I think the plan indicated there used to be a storage tent. So I think there were tables and chairs out there at one point, because when I looked it up on Realtor.com, it showed me some old pictures. The yard had all kinds of lawn furniture in it, so it wasn't being used for parking at that point. But there was a van parked there, and I could see tire tracks where it looked like another car had parked over on the other side, so I can't really give you a good sense. I think the lot can comply with the parking now. It's non-conforming, but it can comply with what's there now. And it can comply probably with the open space. If you subtracted those numbers, you know, if you looked at the numbers, because although it looks like it's all laid out for parking, this back corner, that all could be yard technically. So I can't tell you definitively, but
Yeah, I'm just trying to reconcile the requirement for open space with multifamily dwellings, yet multifamily dwellings not having to comply with the landscaping, not paving of yard areas.
yeah, that's in the ordinance. That provision applies to single, 2, 3, 4, and townhouses. It doesn't apply to multifamily. And the requirements are less for the, excuse me, the actual open space requirements are less. It's 250 square feet per unit for the multifamily, whereas for the 3-family, it's 500 square feet per unit. So it's like it's reduced, there are reduced requirements. I think it's honestly because they contemplate multifamilies are more likely apartments or smaller units, as opposed to a 3-family or a single or a 2, which is, you know, typically a larger unit. I think that's the origin of that difference.
And that's where I struggle with trying to weigh the impact of these deficiencies, given the entirety of the context of the project and the already existing nonconformities.
You all set, Patrick? You want to?
I am, thank you.
All on that? Anyone else have any questions, or for Michelle? Eric McCush.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Michelle, you mentioned in your report the shed in back or the garage in back is of unknown age. Does that mean it was most likely built without a permit, or small enough it wouldn't need a permit?
It's not small enough, if it's after, say, those permit requirements, this zoning went into effect in the 70s, late 70s. The permit requirements, so those are when most of the setbacks are in. It definitely doesn't meet the yard setbacks. If it predates, say, 77, then it would be considered exempt. The requirements for a building permit are in the building code. They're not in the zoning ordinance, so I don't know when those went in. But the size of that would definitely have triggered a building permit under today's, if it was built today.
Okay.
It's not on a foundation. It looks, you know, like a plywood, almost a plywood wooden shed,
Yeah,
like somebody
press
built
board
it.
almost,
Yeah, it doesn't look like a prefab. It doesn't seem to be a garage. It actually seems to be a shed, even though it's big. But again, because it's not on a foundation, it's just being considered a structure, not a building. And the proposal is to remove it.
Okay, thank you.
But I didn't have access to permit records for that. So that's all I can tell you.
If no one else has a question, or they're mulling it over, trying to articulate it, I'll give you my comments. I struggle with this petition because I think it is an egregious overuse of the property. That's how I feel. I believe an 8,000 square foot lot shouldn't have 5 units in it. Now, there are some merits to it. Removing the accessory structures is definitely on the plus side. They have a setback from the sidewalk, so it's not right on the sidewalk what they're going to be building. And then it's next to an apartment building, so it mitigates the impact of the size of the building. Those are on the plus side. But I'm really struggling trying to get over the fact that there is over almost 11,000 square foot. So more than the existing lot deficiency in the lot size, 57% deficiency. I also am concerned with the fact that the dwelling unit space increased 1,900 square feet, or 83% of the dwelling units. The first floor, looking at the plans that were submitted, I don't know that I agree that it's difficult to maintain the existing walls and things like that, because the plans that were presented to us, it seems very compatible between the first and second floor. So that first floor, almost 1,400 square foot unit, I think could have been cut the same way the second floor is. If you look at the existing layout and the proposed layout, I think that first floor unit could have easily been cut in half, given the amount of renovation they were doing for what they proposed. And I think that would have mitigated the need to go up and add 2 units in the attic. So that concerns me. I'm not comfortable with this office study room, because in my mind, with the 2 bathrooms, I can really see that turning into a 3rd bedroom very quickly, no matter how wide the doorway is. I think that's a real concern. And another concern I have is the usable open space. With that one, I get that it's a trade-off between finding parking, providing on-site parking, and providing usable open space for people. I think it's the responsibility of the owner to vet their tenants, and if there's a problem that the neighbors are having to deal with, that they step in and address that situation. So, and I get it wasn't this owner that had the issues with the tenants, it was a previous owner, so this gentleman can't be held responsible for it. But I can see that first floor unit expanding and becoming greater and even more dense in the building. Those are the main reasons why, even though there are some merits to it, the cons offset any of the merits that I see happening. There's nothing that says the current owner can't take that accessory unit in front down anyways. It's not that big. And it could be taken down easily without impacting the existing structure. So it's not unreasonable to think that the current owner could do some of these improvements, increase the value of the units that are left, and make it a viable financial investment, because that's what it is. It's an investment for this gentleman, and good luck. I wish you lots of luck with it. But there are some concerns that the neighborhood's going to be left with that I can't say this is in the interest of the neighborhood and the common good. Those are my thoughts. Eric Henry.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know if it would be appropriate, but I did kind of follow along with a point I think Michelle was asking about. I was to the petitioner, if you could, if there was any discussion about any other units being affordable housing, or even to the citizens. I wanted to ask the councilor that, actually.
Are you asking a question to the chair?
I'm asking permission to ask a question of the petitioner.
Okay. Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Attorney, I'm sorry.
The answer is no. My client did not consider an affordable component to this.
Any possibility of meeting with the ward counselor to have those potential discussions?
Certainly anything's possible.
Fair I just, along the lines of the gross dwelling size, I think it's 57%. You know, I think there was a time where, in the 70s, I guess it would have been, our zoning was more inclusive. And I think the pendulum is swinging back toward inclusive zoning and things. And although 57% on paper seems quite a bit, even in my lifetime in Malden, I've seen lot sizes of deficiencies of 48 and up to 60% when it was 6,000 square foot per lot that were approved by a Board of Appeals. So hopefully the pendulum will swing back a little bit further, that the winds of change would be more conducive to a development like this in the future in Malden. And with that, I'll yield.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Diane Chuha.
Yes, I mean, I'm out there and I'm listening to the neighbors, and it's been a blight on the community for a long time. It's something that, you know, a developer's coming in and fixing it, making it better for the neighborhood and the community. I don't think the deficiencies that are there are going to be any worse than they are now. I know you're saying it's going from a 3-family to a 5-family, but I don't see the open space being a huge issue because they're going up. And I know they're taking parking, but they're taking down a building and a shed. And I understand where that office study can become a problem because it does look like it could be a 3rd bedroom. But they even have it looking like it's a office study, and maybe somewhere in the plans, it looks like they have a desk for 2 chairs. They build a desk, make it look like it is an office, you know, so that a bed can't go in there. If he's calling that an office and he has a wide doorway there, then he can have a desk in that 3rd room that says office study, so they can't fit a bed. You know, you can make it so that it's more conducive to an office. I just think, you know, I always look at the neighbors and I look at the city councilor. If they're up here in favor of it, I mean, I understand we're looking at the broad spectrum, but these are the people that live in the neighborhood. This is the city councilor who's been a councilor for many, many years. I kind of go for them. You know, they're looking at it as an opportunity, as something that's going to be a better fit for the neighborhood. And this gentleman, he lives in Everett, he owns properties. He's a property manager, I'm assuming. And when you own property managements, I mean, hopefully he wants to keep his investments up. I think that's actually a good thing. I don't think it's a bad thing. That's all I need to say.
Thank you, Diane. Is there anyone else who would like to speak or ask Michelle a question? Okay, if there's no more questions, is there a motion? Oh, I thought you recommended it already. So I'm sorry. Go ahead, Michelle. Please read it. Please read it.
The recommendation was prepared prior to the public hearing. It's made provided the board does not make the required finding that the proposal is not my detriment to the neighborhood. So the recommendation, do you want me to say that again? So, okay. Is to deny the petition because the proposal is an overuse of the property, given the property proposal significantly increases the total number of dwelling units by 66%, the total residential living space by 25%, the total size of the building used for dwelling units by 83%, the total number of bedrooms by 33%, on a lot of grossly nonconforming size, 57% deficient, and given the required usable open space for the proposal cannot be provided on site. So that recommendation was prepared prior to public hearing, and it's made provided you do not make the required findings that the proposal is not more detrimental to the neighborhood.
Thank you, Michelle. Eric, are you making a motion?
Yes, Chair, I am. I'd like to make the motion that we approve this permit as presented.
If I could, before it's seconded, Chair, I would recommend certain conditions if you're moving in that direction.
If it receives a second,
Yes.
then we'll defer to Michelle before we take a vote on the conditions that would need to be applied to that program. Is there a second for Eric's motion? Diane Chuhar.
I'm seconding the approval of the petition.
Diane Chuhar has seconded Eric's motion to approve. Michelle, if you would like to give us any recommendations that you would suggest?
Thank you. So you would need to then, amend that motion if you were moving in that direction. First condition I would recommend is that all development shall be as per plans unless modified by these conditions. So you would grant a special permit subject to these conditions. That would be the first. The second would be the maximum total number of bedrooms is 8. Third would be install and maintain vinyl privacy fencing along western, northern, and eastern property lines. 4 would be submit a site plan that depicts all required usable open space, 1,650 square feet, within 14 days of granting the special permit. Install and maintain open space in accordance with the plan. 5, install and maintain an on-site stormwater management drainage system as per plan, subject to city engineer's review, approval, and reasonable modifications requested. And that's relative to the rear yard and all the paving. 6, outside storage of any kind is prohibited except covered trash and recycling that complies with city ordinances. And 7, install, repair, or replace sidewalks, driveways, and perform necessary incidental work adjacent to the property to the reasonable satisfaction of the DPW director. So I would recommend those 7 conditions. I'm not sure what to do about the office. You could try to, the condition is that it's a total number of 8 bedrooms.
Right, that's the best you can do with
That's
that.
the best you can do. I don't think you can say things like, don't
People are gonna violate it, they're gonna violate it.
yeah, you won't know that it's in violation until the neighbors report it and say there's 15 people living there and there's 8 bedrooms, so,
They'd have to get it inspected, though, as part of the city's apartment inspection program, wouldn't they?
any change in rental unit is subject to the rental unit inspection, and the building inspector will inspect the whole property before he issues an occupancy permit to determine compliance with the condition. So if there are more than 8 bedrooms, he wouldn't issue the occupancy. I want to call your attention to the condition I read about open space. So this means if they can't comply with this, that's a problem. So, I don't think they can comply with it. I didn't see the plan, I requested the plan, it wasn't submitted with the plan that was filed with the petition. And so, you could be imposing a condition that can't be met, so I want you to be aware of that.
Okay.
I wrote these up just as placeholders in the event that it was moving in that direction. I don't like to be, have you in a position of totally off balance and not having something. So I would, focus on that condition, because I don't think it can be met unless, you want to hear from the petitioner or somebody that it can be met.
Well, let
Otherwise,
me first ask, I see Patrick Fitzgerald and Eric McCush, if they have a question about the proposed conditions. If it's not about the proposed conditions, we'll go to Eric Henry and see if and Diane Chuhar to see if they're willing to maintain their motion, given the proposed conditions that Michelle's making.
They would need to amend that
Right,
to
you
add
have to
them,
amend
right?
it. So Patrick Fitzgerald, do you have questions on the conditions?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. In addition to saying no more than 8 units, can we be more specific and say no more than 2 bedrooms per unit? And that could be something more specific to identify the very valid issue and concern about the first floor unit. What's that?
Yeah, I think what Diane's saying, not into the microphone, is that there are 1-bedroom units.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know where they would be able to say there's 3 on the first floor. They would have to take 1 away from another unit, which didn't seem feasible, but I don't know if that's an added layer of protection, as well as not allowing any residential use of the basement. And then, as it relates to that proposed condition regarding the open space where we don't have a plan, obviously that could force their hand, and then they would have to come back before us asking to amend the permit as it relates to that condition if they aren't able to comply.
That's correct. I mean, the other option would be you table it and allow them to come up with the plan so that you'll know if you're approving something that doesn't have the open space, or you change the number. The problem is I don't know what you change the number to because I don't know what's being provided. I would say, okay, maybe 1,000 is good, but I don't know if they can even get 1,000. So we're kind of at a disadvantage. Again, I put that out as a placeholder. In terms of the number of bedrooms, I think you're protected by saying maximum 8 and as per plans. So they can't really change that around. I do, however, would agree with the recommendation, no residential, and I think you have to say no residential living space in the basement. It is technically residential space because it's storage for the residential unit. So I don't think we can say no residential use, but I think no residential living space in the basement.
Or
There
no
shall be
bedrooms?
no, I think that's reasonable.
Or no bedrooms?
Well, you've limited it to 8 already, so, maybe, you know, I guess the question, if it turns into a family room or something else, that then becomes. Yeah, or maybe that's the better way to go. Eric said basement use for storage
Only.
only, although are they showing utilities as well?
Yes.
Okay, so basement for storage, utilities only.
you have
Utilities
anything
are
else,
washer,
Patrick?
dryer?
No, thank you.
Okay, Eric McCush.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, Michelle, I just had a question about the vinyl fencing. Does it have to be vinyl? Is there a reason for that?
Well, we usually recommend vinyl because it's easy to maintain, and there's no issue with it needing to be painted and splintering and breaking, and it looks good on both sides. So those are different reasons why we typically say vinyl.
Okay. Okay.
That cuts down on the maintenance, I think, but, you know.
Okay, you all set, Eric?
I am.
Mr. Henry, did you hear the conditions that were proposed, and are you ready, are you willing to amend your motion?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did hear and understand the amendments, and I'm leaning strongly toward amending. I'm stammering because of about the open space issue that it's just, and trying to give the petitioner every opportunity to make, and the residents to make this a viable win for everyone. But we, you know, to impose an unattainable goal to him would be, you know, I don't think that's the purpose of our body. So is it an opportunity for him to come back, to have the chance to see if he can meet the open space requirements you said,
So
Michelle?
you're suggesting possibly tabling and having them revise the plan?
Yes, sir.
Counselor, would your client be willing to table and revise the plan to address some of these issues that Michelle has listed as conditions? So that you're not forced to make a decision on the fly and see what you can actually do.
No, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your consideration. Yeah, I think that's reasonable. I don't think we're going to meet it. I think Michelle's intuition is correct, that we're not going to be able to meet it, but you know, we didn't find out that we didn't discover we had neglected to have this information on the plans until right before the long weekend. Of course, the long weekend hits, and then, so I apologize for that. But certainly, if the board feels tabling is appropriate and they want.
Well, no, it's more, what do you think you can do in that time? Because I
In
think what I'm hearing from you is that you don't think that they can get the open space.
I don't think we can meet, I think Michelle's analysis, you know, I'm not gonna go necessarily to the accuracy because I don't know myself, as I think she's uncertain, but I just don't see that we're gonna meet it, and
Yeah.
that's my point.
So then it becomes for Mr. Henry and Ms. Chuha to see if they want to allow such a big development to go without any usable open space. I mean, this is.
Or an unknown amount.
Or an unknown amount.
Usually you say approved as per plan, and then you see on the plan where it's gonna be, So that, 10 years from now, if somebody says, hey, they're paving the front yard or they're using it for something else, you could say, no, that's required to be open space. So that's the protection of the plan for
Right.
you, the city, and the petitioner. Without having that, I don't know, unless you want to just agree, the other option would be to, if you're gonna table it for a plan that doesn't really, if it's not gonna comply, maybe you just specify the front yard, I don't know, I'm not really sure. This side yard probably should be, I guess you could specify that.
Mr. Chairperson, may I?
Yep.
Yes.
I think the point that I'm hearing from the board in Michelle's suggestion or comment is that we're not going to meet the open space, but we want to memorialize where the open space is. So to Michelle's point, that if somebody decides to put a driveway and park an RV on it on the side, then it's clear that that wasn't the intent of granting a special permit, because it reduces further the open space. So if I'm reading the board correctly, then certainly a tabling would be in order, so that we may go back and give you an exact plan, so that when you vote, it is memorialized.
From my perspective, you're exactly correct. If I've been consistently a kind of stickler for having correct plans in this, so if this is for no more than the purpose of allowing you to present us with the proper and prim plans, I would be in agreement with you doing as such, tabling as such.
So Eric, are you looking to amend your motion to allow them to withdraw, to table, allow the petition to be tabled and have them provide a detailed site plan, which could have been avoided a lot of problems if it was provided in the first place, but so that specifically you want a detailed site plan?
Yes.
Showing the open space.
Showing the open space
And also the language about the laundry in the basement that was,
I'll prepare the list of conditions.
Thank you.
Between now and then, but I think what's best is have Diane withdraw her second and Eric withdraw his motion. Then you just start from scratch with a new motion.
Okay.
You wouldn't be amending it.
Give me a second. Diane Shuhara, are you willing to withdraw your second?
Yes.
Thank you. Eric Henry, would you be willing to withdraw your original petition?
yes, Chair.
Thank you very much. Eric Henry, would you like to make a motion? Give me a second. Okay?
Yes, sir. I'd like to make the motion that we approve the petition as amended. And Michelle can provide.
So it would be tabled and the petitioner provide a detailed site plan showing open space.
That is correct.
Thank you.
You're making a motion to table this petition.
Yes.
So you're not gonna make a decision.
Right.
Correct.
You're gonna reopen the hearing and tabling the hearing as well, or just the decision?
Well, he's gonna have to come up with something more than he had
So you'll table the
tonight.
whole hearing and your
Yeah.
decision, so that you'll receive that in, and if there's any public comment about it, you can hear that.
Right.
Do you wanna notify abutters?
Yes.
Okay. So to table and to prepare, to allow them the opportunity to submit a site plan showing open space landscaping.
Yes. Eric, is that,
Yes,
you're okay?
thank you.
Diane Chuha, are you willing to second this
Yes.
motion? Very good, thank you. So Eric's made a motion to table so that the petitioner can sharpen the pencil and come up with a detailed site plan that will show the open space, and Diane has seconded that.
So a yes vote is to table the public hearing
Yes.
and decision.
Okay, give me a second here. And just to remind those in the audience that Charlie Ferguson and Risa Gray will not be voting on this. So give me a second here. Let me shut this off. Okay,
Ken Antonucci?
Yes.
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 We'll slow down after that. Hayes, Henry, McCush. Okay?
Yes.
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 Yes. So the petition,
Notify abutters, it will not be required to be republished, it will be posted with the city clerk and online.
very good. You're,
Not including this information in the delay.
And if you could submit 2 weeks prior to the date of a public hearing that you expect to get on, so we have a chance to review it.
Sure.
So I'm not sure about the October hearing, but that's October 13th, so let's say you need it by the 1st, if you have any expectation of getting on for the 13th, or say even September 30th, that's the full 2 weeks. That way we have a chance to give a notice to the abutters. If I receive it by that date, we'll be able to potentially move forward. I can't guarantee it, but it might make it onto the 13th, okay?
Thank you again.
Thank you.
thank you. Thank you very much. And so the next petition that we're going to hear is 215 Beach Street. Ken, can you read the notice once I turn your mic on?
The Malden Planning Board will hold a public hearing in the Herbert L. Jackson Council Chamber, Malden City Hall, 215 Pleasant Street, Malden, Mass. At 7 p.m. on Wednesday, September 8th, 2021. On the petition of Permit Advisors on behalf of property owner Georgetown Capital Malden LLC, permit application number CMID 037607-2021, seeking a special permit under section 12.12.030 of Chapter 12, Revised Ordinances of 2020, as amended of the City of Malden, to allow medical center use of property in the neighborhood business zoning district, namely a medical clinic by Village Medical to occupy approximately 3,131 square feet of the existing building with continued current occupancy of 10,750 square feet of the existing building for retail sales with accessories drive-through by Walgreens at the property known as and numbered 215 Beach Street, Malden, and by Malden City Assessors Parcel ID number 169-535-513.
Very good. Is the petitioner present? If you can come up, name and address for the record, and start your presentation.
Good evening. My name is Kevin Van Heis. On behalf of the petitioner with Kimley Horn and Associates, the project landscape architect, with me this evening are members of the project team, including Village Medical, the project architect, and the project traffic engineer, if there are questions in addition to the landscape plan that's presented. 1 North Lexington Avenue, City of White Plains, New York, 10601. We're before you this evening requesting a special permit to allow a medical center in the neighborhood business zoning district. We visited the site last Wednesday to review the condition of the site generally, but also specific to the landscape that exists. During that visit, we identified that for the most part, all of the shrub material that's installed has reached the end of its useful life. The plant materials, well, the tree material is actually in pretty good condition. There's large areas of mulch throughout the site. And so what we've done is prepared a plan that we believe will offer 12 months of interest and address some of the concerns with large areas of mulch. It'll provide screening, and it'll also provide, as I said, interest throughout the year. So how we do that is we provide a mix of evergreen shrub material, evergreen ground cover, ornamental grasses, and I can run through the plan kind of south to north, counterclockwise, starting on Sherman. There are existing calorie pears that are in good shape along the retaining wall. So as I said, those will remain, but we are proposing to underplant those with a mix of liriope, which I've provided some an 11 by 17 precedent sheet that shows what those plants look like, but I can answer questions if you have specific ones about them. So underneath those trees, we were proposing to plant the ground cover liriope, which is, it looks like grass. It's actually right in front of this building in one of the planters. It's very hardy, does well with salt. And then as you get closer to that driveway entrance, we would transition to juniper, a low juniper, ground cover juniper, for the evergreen component. And right at the entrance is grow low sumac, which is deciduous, but that enables us to introduce something that will change through the seasons. It's got great fall color, and again, is very salt tolerant. We use it very frequently in parking lot applications. As you continue towards Washington, we begin to introduce shrub material. We're proposing inkberry, which is an evergreen shrub, so that you can begin to screen some of the parking areas. We're not blocking the views completely, we're just breaking them up. And then we go back to the ground plane with grow low, which is the deciduous ground cover. And then as you move along Washington, the trees there are honey locust, also in good condition. And so we're underplanting those with a mix of ground cover and shrubs. We're proposing that same combination of juniper and grow low, so repeating that element across all of the frontages. But we're also introducing viburnum, which is a native shrub. It's, again, got great fall color. It does flower in the spring, very hardy. It's a native plant, does well in these types of applications. And then as we get to the entrance at Beach, around the sign, we're proposing, again, juniper as the ground cover, but here we're introducing some ornamental grasses, which will provide more of a highlight than a screen, but it'll help to frame that sign without obscuring it. And then as you move to Hancock, again, we're proposing that same palette of plants that we had in the front. They're just organized a little bit differently. Liriope is what's proposed along the parking lot so that there's not an issue with overhang of cars. And then at that entrance off of Hancock, again, we have the ornamental grasses. So it's a relatively simple plant palette. It is more diverse than what exists today, and we are proposing more landscape coverage than what you see out there today. Any questions about the plant material?
No, I don't have any. Michelle, do you have any? No. Does anyone else? No? No, thank you very much for that.
I'm Nicole Nebelong with RSP Architects. I'm out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. We are the project architects on this project. I just thought I'd give you a quick overview of the plan of the interior of the building. Exterior of the building wise itself, the only changes would be signage to add the village medical signage into it. But you'd enter into the building with a shared vestibule, shared by both tenant spaces. Walgreens operations would effectively remain the same. They're just reducing their sales floor area and reducing their shelving area. Village Medical, you'd enter directly into their patient waiting area, and then you have 8 exam rooms, a nurse's station area, as well as 3 doctor's offices and a lab. So that's just kind of the basic overview of the floor plan. If you have any questions of how that lays out, I can certainly answer.
Yes, I do actually.
Okay.
So when you walk in the doors, there'll be a space before you hit the reception, or do you walk
Yes, so
right
you
into
have
the
a
reception?
vestibule area. It's about, I think it's about 20 feet by 20 feet, a vestibule. So on one side will be doors into Walgreens, and then you have another doors into the Village Medical, and then yes, you have a patient waiting area, and the reception desk is at the back of the waiting area.
And you'll build walls surrounding the
Yes, there is a
new medical
demising wall to separate the 2 spaces completely, so.
Okay, now, so this would start somewhere around where your cosmetics area is?
Yep, this is effectively going into the cosmetics area. You still have a clear line of sight to the pharmacy from the entry doors into the Walgreens. It just rearranges how their shelving lays out and where their checkouts are.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. How long would you expect the renovations to take place?
I believe the schedule for construction is about 12 to 14 weeks.
Is this stuff you can do, 12 to 14 weeks will take us into the...
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
12 to 14 weeks will take us out of the building season. Will you have a problem with that, or is it all going to be interior based?
It's all interior.
Okay,
Well, with the exception of the landscape upgrades.
okay, and will there be any medical waste generated that needs special pickup?
I believe Glenn with VMD can answer that question better than I can, but I do not believe so.
Okay, if
But-
he wants to come up and tell us a little bit about the actual operation that's going in there. I think what you've described is pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
You're going to basically cordon off a third of the floor space and populate it with this medical center.
Good evening. My name is Glenn Eliason. I am the Director of Physician Network Development for Village Medical. I reside at 47 Magnolia Drive, Hopkinton, Massachusetts.
Can you start, sir, with a little bit about what Village Medical is?
So Village Medical is a value-based primary care organization. Essentially what we do is we employ primary care physicians, traditionally internal medicine or family medicine physicians, at locations throughout the throughout the country. So right now we employ about 2,000 or so physicians throughout the country in several states. With that said, we also have our home office with typical ancillary staff, IT, executive management, which is based in Chicago, Illinois.
Okay. Okay, and what services do you provide?
So at this site and any of our other proposed sites in the state as well as nationwide, we would typically have 2 full-time physicians. They would typically be an internal medicine physician as far as their training or a family medicine physician. There would also be 1.5 FTE of something we call an advanced practitioner. That would either be a nurse practitioner or a physician assistant. As far as the services we provide, it would be described as a traditional ambulatory outpatient primary care office. People would be coming in for annual physicals, to have routine lab work done, to talk to a physician or a care provider about having a prescription refilled, a chronic condition that potentially could be bothering them, flu-like symptoms, cough, cold, getting a routine vaccination, anything really under that traditional outpatient primary care umbrella is a type of service that could be delivered to a patient at this site.
Okay, now what type of medical waste would be generated from this?
As far as
Is it
medical
like
waste,
needles or?
I was
so
going
if
to
you
say,
give them
obviously,
vaccinations?
if your PCP wants to check, someone's, lab results, obviously, if we do a finger stick, to your point, it would, have a needle which would be disposed of in a safe needle jar and would need to be picked up. But other than that, I can't think of any medical waste that would be generated besides potentially, something like a needle.
And do you contract services to do that, to pick it up?
We would typically contract that type of a service, yes.
Okay. What are the hours of operation or proposed hours of operation?
So I don't want to misspeak, but off the top of my head, it'd be traditional. I want to say probably the earliest appointment Monday through Friday would probably be about 8 in the morning. I believe during the week it'd probably be about 4:30, 5 o'clock would be one of the last appointment times. The weekend is a little bit long, extended hours if I remember correctly. I think it's more of, I think it's about maybe 7 to 7 if I remember approximately. I can double check on it with my notes, but essentially the hours would coincide under the hours that the Walgreens itself is open. So we wouldn't be open if the Walgreens wasn't open, at least from a store perspective,
Okay, so.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot more sense. And it would be 7 days.
Correct, yes, we would have care provided 7 days a week.
Now, how many staff would you expect at any one time to be on premises?
So with that said, all of the clinicians wouldn't be working at the exact same time. You know, let's say, you know, for example, on a Wednesday like today, there would likely be 2 full-time physicians in the office. There's typically a front desk secretarial type role. Each full-time physician is typically supported by about 1.5 medical assistants, so that's about 3 folks right there. And we typically do have an on-site practice manager or supervisor, as well as sometimes a lab tech type person as well, assuming the MA hasn't been trained in those duties. So a handful of staff would typically always be working at any given day of the week.
So that's 8?
Approximately, yeah.
And how many locations do you operate now?
So
Are there any in this area?
In Massachusetts, we currently do not operate any in the state yet. We employ about 70 physicians approximately, based in Rhode Island. We also have physicians that are affiliated through us contractually in New Hampshire, but to this date, we don't have any facilities currently in Massachusetts that are seeing patients.
So you're based in Chicago and you have your only operations are in Rhode Island and New Hampshire?
Closest to Massachusetts, we're in Indiana, Texas, Florida, other states as well, but we don't have anything in the Commonwealth yet.
Okay, so you're nationwide.
Nationwide, yes, correct.
Okay, Michelle, do you have anything else? Oh, I didn't see Patrick flip in when I looked over. He wasn't there. Patrick?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So you said this is like a primary care. Is this appointment only, or is there any walk-in or urgent care services that would be provided?
So it's not a walk-in urgent care. That isn't typically our model. Typically, folks would call in advance to make a primary care appointment. So it's not like a CVS Minute Clinic or some other retail urgent care sites you see where, you know, someone could come in with a sprained ankle or a sore throat or things of that nature. But obviously, if someone came in and you know, we had availability and someone said, you know, my throat hurts, we would certainly see them if possible. But we're not geared as a retail urgent care center. The idea would be that folks would be, for lack of a better phrase, an impaneled patient and a provider. So they would say, you know, Dr. Smith is my doctor. I'm having a physical or a sick visit with them. Whereas when you go to a traditional urgent care site, whoever's available sees you, if that makes sense.
It does. And do the providers in your other locations accept insurance?
Yes.
Both private and public?
Correct. We would intend to take Medicaid, Medicare, as well as various commercial payers.
And are your other locations affiliated with Walgreens? Are they in Walgreens stores? Or are they...
Yes, they're what we would consider a co-located Walgreens location, so carved out of an existing Walgreens pharmacy.
Okay. And in those other locations, similar to what you're proposing here, how many patients do they see in a day?
I would say, you know, approximately, you know, each provider, you know, just as a ballpark, I would say a physician would probably see anywhere from maybe 15 to maybe 22 patients per day. When they're ramped up, assuming they're seeing maybe 20 minutes or so for a sick visit, approximately 40 minutes or so for a follow-up or an annual physical type visit. But with that said, it obviously can fluctuate depending on that clinician style. You know, obviously, if you have a panel of 70-year-old patients, they require a longer and slower visit than a doctor who might see, you know, 25 and 30-year-old patients per day. But I would say most are probably in that 15 to 20 range once they're established.
And are all the other locations have a similar number of exam rooms? It seems like, and perhaps I'm misinformed, a lot for just 1 or 2 actual physicians.
Typically, my understanding is, and correct me if I'm wrong, pretty much all of our sites have a roughly similar footprint as far as square footage, exam rooms, and the layout.
And do they use all the rooms at any given time during the day, or is there a a certain number that's more typically used?
Yeah, I mean, it obviously fluctuates with volume, but, assuming we were fully staffed and providers had busy practice, I would say that it'd be safe to say that most of the exam rooms, if not all, would probably be occupied at any given time during the day.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Patrick was asking some questions and it triggered something. Can you describe what value-based primary care is?
So what value-based primary care, without trying to make it too complicated, essentially, by value-based, it means essentially you're sharing risk with a commercial insurance contractor. Let's say Medicare, for example, or let's say Blue Cross Blue Shield. Example of value-based is essentially they have quality measures. So, for instance, a Blue Cross Blue Shield might say, we want any of your patients that identify that they smoke tobacco to be given advice on how to quit using tobacco products. They would want us, from a quality perspective, that 100% of patients that identify themselves as someone who uses tobacco to get smoking cessation education. When we contract with these insurance companies, being a value-based organization, the value we provide, both the patient and the insurance companies, are working in tandem to try to keep that patient healthy, keep that comorbidity or that chronic condition from landing them in the hospital. So from a payer's perspective, if the insurance company like Blue Cross Blue Shield, the example I just gave, said you guys did a great job making sure all of your patients that use tobacco got smoking cessation education, they would give us money, and that's typically from a financial standpoint, that's how we would make a profit. When we take better care of patients, we're a more profitable organization. As opposed to an older model of healthcare, is you see as many patients as possible and you bill as much as you can for those services. That's typically referred to as kind of a fee-for-service model.
Okay, thank you, that's helpful.
Sure.
Pat, were you all set?
I am, thank you.
Michelle, Ken Antonucci.
Yes, just a couple quick questions. So you said you won't have walk-ins, but you will be having sick visits. Those are pre-arranged, call-in, my daughter has a sore throat kind of visits?
Sure, typically someone would say, could be a daughter, could be an adult, I'm having a sore throat, I've had, a cough for a week and a half. Anything that someone would typically care, a primary care office, we would have that person come in for something we consider to be a sick visit. So it's not a routine, annual physical, that type of a visit. There's a particular reason.
Okay, and you did say, and I apologize, I know you said this before, but how many doctors do you think you'd have on site in a day?
It would be 2 full-time physicians, either trained in internal medicine or family medicine, and it'd be 1.5 advanced practitioners, so either nurse practitioners or physician assistants.
And then plus reception staff?
Plus reception, medical assistants, ancillary staff, yes, but.
Okay, so I think, maybe 8?
Yeah, I'd say probably 6 to 8, in a
6 to
given
8
day would be
employees.
working there, and that's, counting clinicians and support staff as well.
And that'd be the rotation of the doctors, you said, right?
Correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anyone else have any questions? Michelle, did you have any? I did. Well, very good.
Thank you. What did you call them, advanced practitioners?
Yes,
Advanced-
they're also sometimes called a mid-level or typically called an advanced practitioner or a mid-level provider is how they're often referred to.
Okay, so 6 to 8 would include the 2 full-time doctors, the 1.5, so then that leaves about 4.5 support staff.
Approximately,
Okay.
and just to note, if I didn't make it clear earlier, we wouldn't have all of these clinicians that can see patient autonomously,
Okay.
working at a time. So during the week, there would typically be the physicians there, sometimes an NP or a PA, depending on the schedule. During the weekend, Saturday, Sunday, there would always at least be 1 nurse practitioner or 1 physician
Okay.
assistant in the office. So 7 days a week, there would always be someone that could prescribe medicine or take a call for the practice.
So total any given day, it's 6 to 8 employees, or it's total 6 to 8 employees that will work there?
So let me backtrack for a second. So let's say, if it's Wednesday like today, and we have 2 physicians. Each physician would have 1.5 medical assistants. Let's say that goes from 2 to 5, plus a front desk person, plus maybe a lab tech, that brings you to 7. So, depending on the day of the week, I think just to give you a fair range, probably anywhere from maybe 4 to 8 people would be physically working in the building at any given time.
Okay. So on that note, I had a similar question to Patrick. 8 exam rooms seem like a lot. How?
So it does sound like a lot. One reason, having that many exam rooms is it's from a strategic standpoint, it's always better to have, more than less. With that said, when I go to the doctor's office, and I think when many of us do, it's very common when you check in, the person at the front desk verifies your medical insurance, et cetera. Oftentimes you're brought into that room. The physician or the NP or PA might be next door. They're working on that patient, but you're being brought into that room. That medical assistant is, verifying your, address, checking your blood pressure, saying, do you still take, 25 milligrams of this a day? So, while it might not seem like we only have a billing provider in an exam room or two at a time, those other exam rooms aren't being used by medical assistants and folks like that that are, checking height and weight, verifying prescriptions, and of course pulling that chart up on the electronic medical record. So when the physician walks into that exam room, they're ready to provide care right away. They don't have to verify if you're still taking a medication or check your blood pressure. They're ready to go.
Okay, thank you. What do you, if you had to, you're not an urgent care center, you're not really just doctor's offices, what would you, you said your ambulatory outpatient care, your primary care, what would you, how do you classify yourself? Are you a medical clinic? Are you a community health center? What?
Yeah, wouldn't say we're a community health center. I would say we're a traditional primary care office co-located within a Walgreens retail pharmacy.
Okay. And the reason I'm asking is because one of the recommendations is to put some sort of reasonable restriction on the type of medical center that can be there so that it, isn't necessarily, so that the board is aware of what's being approved for that location. Other types of medical center uses could generate more or less foot traffic or have other concerns. Medical waste was another question. It sounds like there's really none, but where do you store what's there? Is that in this storage room in the back? It says VMD storage?
Yeah, typically.
Or where does it go? Do you have your own dumpster, or would you need it?
So typically, when you contract, I understand it was like a biomedical waste, company, typically, in the exam room, if a medical assistant or a lab tech or whoever, pricks your finger, that needle flies back in for safety into the injection. That's thrown in one of those bins, one of those sharp dispensers. My understanding is they'll be taken, first collected in an exam room or a lab setting. They'd then be probably collected by, janitorial staff into a larger, safer bin. Then that contractor physically removes that from the site, is my understanding.
So it stays in your premises? It doesn't leave the building until the contractor picks it up?
Correct. I don't believe there'd be a dumpster or anything like that, or anything.
Well, because there was none shown, and the one at the Walgreens is over on the other side, so there's no, transportation of that waste around the site? It's picked up?
Yeah, correct, not to my knowledge.
Okay. So, on that note, you do leave, there's a passageway to get to the VMD storage? So you leave your area to get to the storage area and the restrooms, is that correct? Maybe that's an architect's question.
Storage area is really, they're storing their EKG machine. I think they're putting some records and things like that, but it's not waste storage. It's meant for auxiliary supplies for the clinic.
Okay.
Just due to the configuration of this location, it normally would have been within the devising walls, and the break room would have been outside in the Walgreens area, but it just didn't fit with this case, so that's why that's up there.
Okay. And so are the restrooms that are near that VMD storage, are those the Walgreens restrooms or yours?
Those are the Walgreens restrooms. VMD has two single-user restrooms.
Okay, I see
within their
that,
space.
okay. So you don't send anybody outside, once they come into your unit, they're in there?
Yeah, we do have a door that will let people then access to get to the pharmacy.
Okay, because you're back to the pharmacy, okay. Okay, thank you. My other questions go back to the services. So are you providing any type of any surgical services, anything like that? Because you said outpatient, but they do a lot outpatient now.
Correct. So yeah, this would not be an ambulatory surgical center. So you might have seen those in the area throughout the greater Boston area. A place where a low acuity patient might have a knee replaced, have a shoulder surgery or anything like that. There would not be any what you consider to be a surgical procedure.
So no surgical procedure. So if that was part of the restriction, you would be fine with that, because you don't perform surgical procedures?
We don't perform surgery. You could say some family medicine physician as well as internists might perform a non-surgical procedure, which does not require anesthesia. I'll give you an example. I've worked with many family medicine physicians that if you came in to see them, if they were trained and said, I have an ingrown toenail, they'd say, okay, I can give you a little lidocaine and I could take that in the office. That would be an example of a mild procedure, but I would say that obviously a medical professional wouldn't consider that surgery because the patient is not under anesthesia.
Okay, so if we said no surgical procedures, that's fine.
I think that would be fair because
Just so that it doesn't turn into more than that.
I think that would be fair because I don't think any medical person would consider, an ingrown toenail or anything like that to be a surgical procedure anyway. But,
Okay.
and we wouldn't provide that anyway, a surgical procedure.
Okay, thank you. And so you said you're usually only open when Walgreens is open, but you will be a standalone separate business, so you could technically be open when they're not open. Is that correct, that you'll have access to the building?
We technically could.
Yeah.
Obviously just from a business in general, if people are feeling sick typically like at 2 in the morning, that would typically be something that if they thought it was life-threatening, they go to the emergency room. So we think we'd have more of a traditional, type business hours. So yes, to answer your question, I suppose we could technically be open at any time, but certainly would want to mirror very closely the Walgreens hours since many of our patients do have their prescriptions filled at a Walgreens location.
Okay. I'm just checking. So hours of operation in general are 7 to 11. And that, you would fall into that, 7 a.m. to 11.
That'd be my understanding, yes. I think that's when the.
Retail stores are actually 6 a.m. to 11. So the Walgreens, and that's not a 24-hour site, but they potentially have different hours. So if you wanted to go beyond those, you'd need to seek a license from the city council to extend your hours of operation.
I don't believe we would at this time, but if we certainly decided to, we would seek that permission.
Okay, thank you. And then the last question I had was, so you don't have a pharmacy in your store, but there's a pharmacy right in the Walgreens, so you would send people there so you don't store drugs, or any types of drugs on your
We would not have.
premises?
We would not have pharmaceuticals in the Village Medical site.
Okay.
Obviously, a patient can choose, any pharmacy. It would be convenient for them, and assuming it was preferable for their insurance company, we would gladly have that prescription sent to the Walgreens where they're getting care. Obviously, it's convenient for many patients, particularly lower-income patients with transportation issues, to get the prescription filled same day of appointment at the Walgreens they're already at. But certainly, if someone said we prefer CVS or a family pharmacy, obviously we would honor that as well.
Okay, all right, thank you. I think that's it for now, thank you.
Thank you. Ken Antonucci.
Yeah, so, I mean, we've talked about a lot of the different services and everything, but you really sound like a traditional, it almost sounds like your model is really like a traditional PCP associate's office.
I would agree. I would completely agree with that.
Yeah, that you just so happen to be co-locating within a Walgreens. Right?
Yes, I would agree.
And so, and you said before, your other locations nationally, are they primarily with Walgreens? Are they exclusively Walgreens, or do you have any standalone facilities?
So we have many locations that are what we call co-located, so physically within a Walgreens space. We also have many sites, particularly in our more established markets, where we do have standalone Village Medical office buildings, which are not physically within a Walgreens physical plant.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Eric McCush.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You had mentioned having a lab tech on site. Would that be for taking, someone does a blood sample, they would take the blood sample and process it right then and there?
Exactly, or typically it wouldn't probably be able, depending on the test, some things can be, like a strep test, you might have something simple, where coming to a sore throat, they put the stick in your mouth, you cough, you gag on it, and then they can do a rapid test there. Depending on what type of test, the physician was ordering, that might get sent out to an off-site lab depending on the complexity of it.
Okay, so if they're like drawing blood, that would be more complex.
So sorry, so you're saying if it was more complex?
If they're drawing blood, would that get processed there, or would that get sent outside?
I believe it would typically be sent outside. It would probably go to a reference lab or a place that did pathology, or it depends on what we were looking for.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Any other questions for the petitioner? Is there anything you'd like to add, you or any of the rest of your team?
I think we're all set. Thank you for asking.
Thank you very much. Okay, at this time, we'd like to entertain anyone that would like to speak in favor of this petition. Anyone who would like to speak in favor? Michelle, do you have anything to read in favor? No. Last call for in favor. Seeing and hearing none, declare that part of the hearing closed. At this point, is there anyone that would like to speak in opposition to this petition? Anyone in opposition? Michelle, anything to read in opposition? No. Seeing and hearing no one in opposition, declare that part of the hearing closed. Michelle, could you take us through your staff report and recommendation, please?
Yes. And this, for the board's reference, this whole report will be incorporated by reference into this hearing, even though I will not be reading it verbatim. I won't repeat anything that's already been discussed or said in the presentation, or I'll try not to. So the property is located on the eastern city line of Malden. The site, is located partially in Malden and partially in Revere. The property contains 71,179 square feet. It's the site of a single-story building with a gross floor area of 13,881 square feet, a drive-through and an accessory freestanding ground sign. The majority of the parcel and building are located in Malden. The property is also located in the floodplain district. Since constructed in 1999, the property and building have been occupied by Walgreens Pharmacy Store. Petitioner is the property owner's authorized representative. You heard what the proposal is to occupy approximately 3,131 square feet or 3,223 square feet per the plan of the existing building. Walgreens will continue to occupy the remainder of the building and the drive-through. You heard about the proposal, how they're going to renovate the space. I've listed the plans they've submitted here: floor plan, site plan, exterior elevations. They've also submitted a traffic impact study request for waiver. The landscape plans, we received existing landscape plan and proposed landscape plan. You received those copies. Those are what was submitted tonight. We had received that electronically this past week. Zoning and occupancy, the property is located in the neighborhood business zoning district in Malden. The proposed medical clinic is classified as a medical center use. Medical center use is allowed by special permit. The existing retail sales and accessory drive-through uses are allowed by special permit in this district. And the existing retail sales was allowed by special permit granted in case 98-13. You have a copy of that attached to the staff report. The approved proposal at the time included the drive-through, although that drive-through does predate the current special permit requirements. The existing freestanding ground sign was allowed by a variance granted in 1998. I have a copy of that. I did not put that in your package. If anyone's interested in that, I can show you that. Direct abutters to the west are single-family dwellings, to the south, single-family dwellings, and a two-family dwelling. To the west, on the other side of Hancock Road, a single-family dwelling and a two-family dwelling. To the north, on the other side of Beach Street, a motor vehicle repair shop and gasoline filling station, self-storage facility, and retail sales. To the east, on the other side of Sherman Street, a retail business storefront with hair salons, bakery, and a two-family dwelling. And to the northeast, on the other side of Washington Ave, a gasoline filling station. Surrounding land uses a residential business and the abandoned railroad right-of-way used as the public multimodal recreational trail bike to the Sea Northern Strand Community Trail. In terms of dimensional controls, the property and building comply with dimensional controls for the current and proposed continued retail sales use and the proposed new medical center use. The proposal creates no violations or nonconformities. In terms of parking requirements, the proposal requires a total of 61 off-street on-site parking requirements. 43 are required for the retail sales use of 10,750 square feet. 18 are required for the 3,223 square foot use medical center. Site plan depicts 70 parking spaces are provided on site. 53 are located entirely in Malden. As I said, the site is partially in Malden, partially in Revere. In terms of the parking layout, the widths of all aisles comply with the requirements for two-way traffic for the head-on parking space configurations. In terms of driveways, the 3 driveways comply with the width requirements. There are 3 driveways, a 2-way driveway on Hancock Street. I think I said Hancock Road before. I think it's street.
Hancock Road.
This is road, okay. So this should say road. Street is down in Ward 1, okay. So this is Hancock Road. 2-way driveway in Hancock Road, Malden, 30 feet in width. That provides access egress. There's a 1-way driveway on Beach Street, approximately 29 feet in width. That provides access only. And then there's a 2-way driveway on Sherman Street, Revere, 40 feet in width. It provides access and egress. There is an exclusive lineup area for drive-through facilities that, when constructed, was determined to comply with the minimum dimensions. Landscaping, yard areas which are not paved for parking or access must be landscaped. The regulations require 1 shade tree per 10 parking spaces of certain caliber with curbing and drainage area. The existing and proposed landscaping plans depict landscaping in 8 trees, 5 of which are in Malden in compliance with the requirements. So we did just look at the requirements, which are the 53 spaces for the trees, although they do actually comply with trees for all 70 spaces, but technically, the 5 are required in Malden. For snow storage, there are areas that collectively provide the required amount. Those are depicted on the proposed landscape plan. In terms of loading spaces, the retail sales use requires 1 loading space. There is an area provided on the eastern side of the building. The medical center use requires no loading space. In terms of dumpsters, there are a dumpster and compactor located in an enclosed gated area on the eastern side of the building. During a recent site visit, there was a lot of trash and debris outside the dumpster in that area. The condition of the special permit for the original store provides dumpsters shall be enclosed in accordance with requirements of the City of Revere. Non-residential uses abutting residential uses must be screened with fencing or foliage. So those are the screening requirements. The area must be at least 10 feet wide. When constructed, the proposal was determined to comply with these requirements. Currently, there are various sections of the existing wooden stockade fencing that are dilapidated and broken. 2 other questions or matters. One is to do with outside storage. There is an outside storage area. It's partially fenced in. It's near the loading area. During a recent site visit, there were a lot of items and debris being stored in the area. There's a picture and the photos of that. There was a cart and some other stuff. That is on the Revere side of the site, however. The floodplain, the property is located in the floodplain district. It was the subject of a special permit granted in case 9814 to allow the construction of the building. You have a copy of that decision attached. This proposal to add the new use does not trigger further review. In terms of traffic, the proposal required a traffic impact study per your rules and procedures. This board granted petitioner's request for waiver of filing requirements on August 25th, 2021, as recommended by the city peer review and correspondence dated August 19, 2021, from Kenneth Petralia. You have a copy of the request for waiver and the peer review recommendation in your package. There are certain findings that you need to make to grant the special permit to allow the medical center use. One is that any creation or increase in violation of the dimensional controls or parking requirements will not be more detrimental to the neighborhood. 2 is that the traffic and traffic patterns generated by the proposed use will not adversely impact any of the surrounding streets or create a traffic or safety hazard. 3, you must find the proposed use will not be more detrimental to the neighborhood, is not in conflict with surrounding land uses, is the 4th finding, and the 5th finding is that the proposed use is in the interest of the common good. So provided that you can make all those findings, you would grant a special permit. The recommendation, which is made prior to the public hearing and provided the board makes the required findings, is that the special permit be granted subject to the following conditions. Before I read those, I do just want to ask or comment. You had asked the question, how long will the construction take? Will be interior. The landscaping is exterior, as well as some of the cleanup issues. So I just am raising that now before I forget, because you may want to make sure that gets addressed sooner rather than later, the landscaping and the site cleanup. In case, this moves into the winter season, unless the board is comfortable with this possibly being done in the spring, but I'm not sure how.
It depends what they're doing. If they're planting things, they probably want to do that in the spring, I would think.
Okay, but the cleanup
But
should
if
be
there's
happening.
cleanup, like mending a fence or painting lines or something like that, that can be done before that.
Okay, I just am
construction season closes.
mentioning that because you may want to add that as part of your condition, so that if they're ready, for example, in November for an occupancy permit, but they haven't
Okay,
complied.
when we reach
Yeah,
that
okay.
point, please just add
Okay, I'll
that
try
in.
to remember to add that, okay. So, the recommendation, again, is to grant a special permit subject to the following conditions. 1, all development shall be as per plans except as modified by these conditions. 2, the special permit only allows occupancy of approximately 3,200 square feet for a medical clinic. Any other type of medical center use will require an amendment of the special permit. No medical marijuana or narcotic drugs may be administered or stored on site by the medical clinic. So that's separate from the Walgreens. Now, I'm calling it a medical clinic because I really wasn't sure what to call it. I'm not sure about that, if that's gonna cover it, or if it should actually say this sort of primary care medical clinic, or if you're okay with it, being just a generic medical clinic. It's, in the past, you've specified it's dental practice, it's a community health center, it's an
Right,
urgent care
If
center,
you want to put PCP medical clinic,
primary
primary
care.
care physician medical clinic,
I'm just throwing it out there because the other types you've specified, so.
right, okay, so if you want to do that,
Primary
then that's
care
fine.
physician
Yes.
medical clinic, does that sound?
Yes.
Right, okay. So that will be added. So the special permit only allows occupancy of approximately 3,200 square feet for a primary care physician medical clinic.
Yep.
Okay?
Yep.
So that will get added in, I would recommend that. The medical center may be, third condition, the medical center use may only be by a primary care physician medical clinic for humans. In the following are expressly prohibited as accessory or any other use of the property: hospital, medical marijuana treatment center, substance abuse treatment center, research and development facilities, any services for animals, and I would add any surgical procedures.
Okay,
4, only minor modifications of the floor, to the floor plan layout of the medical clinic are allowed, excluding changes to size of premises and number and kind of rooms. So they can move the layout around, but there would not be more than 1 nurse's station,
Right.
8 exam rooms. That's the intent. 5, perform daily trash and litter management of entire site. That applies to the whole site. So it's going to be put into the special permit for the medical clinic, but this special permit will run with the property. So ultimately, property owner will be responsible for it. However, if it's not being done, it could come back to affect the occupancy permit of this medical clinic. So I'm just noting that.
okay,
Same thing with 6, install and maintain landscaping of the site as per landscape plan. That is a condition of the special permit. It's runs with the property, but this particular occupant will not be able to get occupancy permit if this is not done. So it's up to them to resolve who's going to be doing it. But here is where I might want to say, by a certain date, no later than, because I have a feeling it might run into an issue. They're not going to have installed everything, and they may be ready for occupancy due to the weather. So maybe no later than, I don't know what date is in the spring would be a reasonable date for planting.
June 30th, 2022.
June 30th, 2022. So by that date, everything has to be in. They could still get their occupancy, and they can still do it prior to that, but, okay. That's understood. 7, install and maintain vinyl privacy fencing along rear, southern, and side western property lines between property and abutting residential properties. So the intent of that is that all that wooden fencing broken, mismatched, some of it's is taken down. It's new vinyl fencing, okay. 8, provide parking on site for a minimum of 4 bicycles. 9, no outside storage allowed except for trash recycling stored in the existing dumpster compactor location, which shall be screened in a gated enclosure that complies with City of Revere regulations. Again, that's really more running with the whole property, not necessarily particular to this. But I guess here is where you may want to make a mention of this medical waste. Medical waste is going to be stored on site at the premises and removed by a contractor, a contracting company, I guess is what they've said.
Right.
So we don't want medical waste ending up in the dumpster.
No.
So,
Typically you have like a box or something.
Right.
That looked like an old milk.
right, so medical waste must be stored on the premises of the medical clinic. I mean, until, do you want to say until it's removed
Yes.
by a contractor? Until removed by medical waste company. Okay, good, medical waste company. So nobody's bringing it over to the dumpster. Okay, so that, I think, we should, maybe we should, that, I guess, should be its own condition, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I would say that should be, so you have 9 is the no outside storage except for trash recycling, and then 10 would be medical waste must be stored on the premises of the medical clinic until removed by a medical waste company. So that would be 10. So then the new 11 is install, repair, replace sidewalks and driveways, perform necessary incidental work adjacent to the property to the satisfaction of the DPW director. Again, that could be the responsibility of the owner, but they will need to get that sign off before this occupancy permit would be issued, so. 11, all lighting and sound speakers for the drive-through, which is actually the new 12, shall be directed away from and screened from surrounding residential properties. 13, the curb cuts, driveways on Hancock Street and Sherman Street, Hancock Road, is it Hancock Road?
Hancock Road.
And Sherman Street shall be two-way for entrance and exit, access and egress. That is a condition of the original special permit. 14, the curb cut driveway on Beach Street shall be one-way for access, entrance only. That is also a condition of the original permit. And 15, the existing freestanding ground sign is allowed as to height and location, sign faces, and all other signs in the building is subject to the sign design review ordinance. So, when that sign design review committee reviews it, they will know that the sign is okay, but they will have approval rights over that, so. There's a process that this petitioner can follow to do that, so. Those would be the 15 conditions I would recommend.
Okay, does anyone have any questions for Michelle on the condition and her recommendation? Patrick Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Michelle, I don't know, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm just trying to think, can you think of any other property or uses similar to this in the city when I consider whether or not it's in the interest of the common good? Because it seems like, I guess it is like a primary care office, but it seems like almost a little bit more just by what I'm hearing. But is there anything comparable in the city that you can think of that exists and where?
Well, I mean, the couple that I listed for reference were, a few cases that I listed for reference that have come before this board, say, within the last 10 years, have been medical center uses, but they've been different types. You've had the urgent care center, you've had which is over on Center Street. You've also had the dental practice on Center Street, which is also a medical center use. Over at 277 Commercial, you've had the South Bay Community Health Center. You've also had, those were the 3 that came to mind.
Would the one that we just voted on over on, by Dockside?
Yeah, that's what I meant, Center Street, I think I said Commercial. Center Street, that one.
That's an urgent care.
That's an urgent care center, but in terms of actual primary care like this, the last proposal that I saw was actually going to be, and this was years ago, was going to be at the 200 Exchange. They had proposed similar to this. It was doctor's offices, primary care, but they never went forward with that. So I think you might have done the traffic waiver, but you never heard the petition. I can't think of any, anywhere else in the city. I'm thinking there are the few new uses that we've seen on Commercial Street. We had the adult day health centers. Those weren't medical center uses. No, I don't think so. I can't recall any.
What about the one that where the Malden EVU was? What's that?
That's the
It's South
community
Bay.
health center.
But that's
South
bigger in
Bay.
scale.
Oh,
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, nothing like this. I mean, the closest, I mean, although the layout of that it had exam rooms and it had the different, setup. But no, my point is you reviewed those under the same standards, the findings.
Okay, and nothing from the city, no city councilors?
No city councilors. I can tell you that there are no increases in violation of dimension controls or parking requirements, so that criteria, or that finding, I think, would
Right.
be reasonable. The traffic, you've already looked at the traffic pattern, so those two findings. It doesn't appear to be in conflict with surrounding land uses, so then that leaves the two, is it more detrimental to the neighborhood? And is it in the interest of the common good? Those are the other two findings. But no, I didn't receive any comments. I did receive a couple phone calls. Actually, a lot of Revere abutters were notified because of the site location. I actually received 2 different phone calls who wanted to know from Revere what the petition was about and what type of clinic it was, and I had explained I wasn't 100% sure we were going to hear the presentation. Honestly, their main question was to do with, the marijuana dispensary type clinic. So one question was that, and the other one was just more informational, whether they were required to attend. So I didn't hear from any other counselors, ward or at large.
Does that answer your question, Patrick?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Michelle? No questions. Is there a motion? Ken Antonucci.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I would like to accept the planner's recommendation and grant the special permit with the 15 conditions.
Okay, Ken's made a motion to accept the recommendation of staff with conditions. Henry Susi.
I'd like to second that motion.
Very good. Thank you. Okay. And 2 alternates are not voting on this one. Give me a second here. After Tawadage, if you could hesitate for a moment.
Ken Antonucci,
Yes.
Diane Chuha,
Yes.
Patrick Fitzgerald,
Yes.
Tawadage Geber Selassie.
Okay,
Pat Hayes,
Yes.
Eric Henry,
Yes.
Eric McCush,
Yes.
Henry Susi,
Yes.
Chuck Iovan.
yes. The petition has been granted with those 15 conditions. Good luck with it. Thank you. Okay, next order of business we have is Eric Henry. We voted to be our representative to the Community Preservation Committee. Eric, would you like to tell us, have you been able to contact them? Are you getting the reception and the information that you need? I imagine, I'm not even sure if you've had time in the last week or so to attend a meeting.
No, we actually have a meeting, I think, on the 15th, and so the process is ongoing of me sticking my toe in the water and getting started.
Well, very good. Good luck with it, and you're getting what you need. And certainly, if you're not getting the response or the connection or the invitation or information about when meetings are, please raise it to Michelle and I, and we'll make sure we correct that.
Will do. Thank you.
Thank you again for extending yourself and being our representative.
We sent the letter to the city council as required, notifying them that Eric was appointed, and I believe they contacted you to have you sworn in, so
Correct.
you're in the official chain of information now. You can't go anywhere now. They have your email and your contact info, so.
Yes, indeed. Thank you.
I think it was on the docket last night, they received that letter in that it's official. They didn't have to act on it, but it was on the docket, so.
Very good,
The
thank
council
you.
docket.
The next two meetings is Monday, we have a meeting where we're gonna hear 735 Broadway. And then there was another one, 260 Eastern Ave.
Yes, but they've requested to table, so will only be 735 Broadway.
Right, and they requested within the time frame that they needed to, so that was good.
You'll still have to vote on it to table it, but, you know, I'll present that on Monday.
Right, but they've requested it, and
Right.
we're kind of rolling forward.
And Diane is not available Monday, so one of the alternates
Yes,
will,
can you guys remind me, who, do you recall who was last, who sat last? I thought it was Charlie. So Risa, why don't you plan on coming Monday? You're certainly welcome to come on Monday if you'd like. But Risa, why don't you plan on voting with Diane not being able to attend? Everyone else is okay for Monday? Very good. And then it looks like October 13th will be the next meeting after that. So we get a month off, which is nice.
and I was going to say, Risa had asked me, so, you know, we have the mask mandate, but there's no longer the gathering mandate, so alternates are welcome to come back and attend the meetings. We used to ask you to do that anyway, just in case there was a last-minute absence. Instead, I had been saying, be on call, but, you know, in case there's a last-minute absence, or if during the course of a hearing, a member needs to recuse himself, realizes they're not going to vote on the petition, sometimes that happens once in a while, too. If you're here for the hearing, then you could jump in and participate as a voting member, so that would be the benefit of coming, if you can. If you can't, you know, that's totally understandable, too.
Okay.
But, and other than that, October 13th is the next meeting, the regular meeting. We have the special meeting Monday, which again, thank you for your flexibility to accommodate that schedule due to my error. And you will just hear the one case, 735 Broadway. If anybody didn't pick up the packages from before, I have copies of the plans and materials that were submitted. If anybody wants them to review in advance before Monday, also have some copies of the Broadway corridor plan, which might come up during that hearing. If anybody wants to pick them up today, they can. If you do take it, we have to bring it back Monday, though, please. If not, that's fine, too.
Okay, if there's nothing else, is there a motion to adjourn? Made by Diane, seconded by Ken Antonucci. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Enjoy the weekend. What, you need something? And shut this down? Thank you all very much.